Our next presenter is Dr. Jay Joshi of National Pain Centers. Dr. Jay Joshi is a nationally recognized board-certified anesthesiologist and fellowship-trained interventional spine and pain management physician. He's considered a national key opinion leader in pain management, and he is presented to a variety of audiences, both large and small, over 600 times. Starbucks is a priority. He's the first interventional pain management physician in the world to work at the World Health Organization in Geneva, Switzerland, in the Department of Substance Abuse. One of the top physician experts in pharmaceutical anti-counterfeiting, and he's a mentor at Matter in Chicago. Patients have come from throughout America and around the world to visit him. Dr. Joshi has actually spent the morning conducting our CME sessions for us today, the first platform in the state of Illinois and, for teaching physicians on medical cannabis. I actually don't think he even had time to eat. So as soon as this is over, please eat. Please welcome Dr. Jay Joshi. I'm sorry you didn't get to eat. Please eat after this. So,
thank you for that warm welcome, Gracie. That was really very sweet of you. But I have lemonade, so I should not pass out here today, so that's good. We actually had, I think we had a great CME forum next door. So CME is Certified Medical Education, so this was the first certified medical education program for healthcare providers, pharmacists, nurses in Illinois on medical cannabis. So I'm like totally happy to be a part of that. You know, that's just, it's always fun when you're sort of trailblazing and hopefully making a difference in a positive direction. I think we did, and I think we had a great audience. Everyone was already very knowledgeable about cannabis and medical cannabis and some of the science behind it. And everyone was just very open to learning about, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, but really most of it was just science. So here, what we're going to talk about here today, this is really not talking as much about the science. We'll touch a little bit about the science. We'll sort of talk about the history of medical cannabis and talk about how it relates to the chronic pain world, some of the pros, some of the cons, and really give you, again, a little science into the insight into why it can be beneficial, as well as why it might not be beneficial in some patients. So really trying to give you a fair and balanced overview, not trying to take one side or the other. Now, just that being said, in our practice, obviously we've seen some patients have tremendous relief and a tremendous response with medical cannabis. I wouldn't be here otherwise. You know, to me, it's all about the proof. It has to be in the pudding. This is not about just an opinion. You have to have something backing it, both from a scientific and experiential standpoint. And then afterwards, I think, Gracie, are we doing questions right after, or the question answer panel at the end? At the end. Okay, perfect. So we'll do question answers at the end, during the question answer session. So the history of medical marijuana, and we call it medical marijuana in this purpose as opposed to medical cannabis, because to me, medical cannabis is the almost the pharmaceutical-like way of dispensing certain products from marijuana. Now, in the past, it was just marijuana, because in the past, 5,000 years ago, you did not have the extraction technology and the cultivation technology that we do today. So medical marijuana has been around for many, many years, okay? So in some respects, over 5,000 years. So this is not something that was just invented a few years ago. This is not something that was just magically created so, certain big businesses could make money. I know that's what I've heard from some people. They're like, oh, it's just an industry full of profiteers and people taking advantage of people's pain, and that's simply not true. We have a ridiculous amount of science that dates back decades in the Western world and hundreds, or if not thousands of years in the Eastern world. So when we look at ancient China, we see that cannabis was used to make fibers 10,000 years ago. And it was used in a medicinal way about 4,000 years ago. It was considered one of the 50 fundamental herbs in traditional Chinese medicine. And it's used as an anesthetic, in a powdered or a mixed form, when they mixed it with various solvents, one of them including wine, as an antiemetic, as a treatment for infections and parasitic hemorrhaging. Now, what we had talked about on the other side in the CME lectures, we had talked about the science behind the endocannabinoid system, a system that's in place throughout the body, a system that's been around since we've been around, a system that looks at both the central nervous system as well as the peripheral nervous system and how they relate to each other when they communicate with each other. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows there's a mind-body connection, but it goes way beyond that. There's science behind that, and when you have a disruption in the homeostasis, you have a disruption in the way that the body functions both on the peripheral aspect but also on the central aspect. And the central nervous system changes. There's something called neuroplasticity. So it changes in response to that stimulation or that disease. And if that's not kept in check, that's when we start seeing chronic diseases. That's when we start seeing diseases worsen. And it's both because the peripheral side was not taken care of, but beyond that, the central side was not taken care of. So the brain hardwires that condition in, and that hardwiring involves multiple different receptors. One of them is called the NMDA receptor. Some of the other ones are involved in the endocannabinoid system. So important to know that, because this is the stuff that these people thousands of years ago knew. They didn't actually know why, but they knew that it occurred. In ancient Egypt, we have evidence that as early as 1700 BC, hemp was used for the relief of pain from hemorrhoids. In ancient India, it's been used for thousands of years for a variety of conditions, including things like headaches, insomnia, pain, childbirth, GI disorders. I'm sure a lot of you know that currently medical cannabis is approved in Illinois for these same conditions. We have patients who take medical cannabis for sleep disturbances. They take it for chronic headaches. They take it for GI problems like Crohn's disease, chronic pain, and various chronic painful conditions. It's not approved for chronic pain specifically. It's approved for a variety of conditions that result in chronic pain. They also recognize the psychoactive properties, again, thousands of years ago. Ancient Greece has been used for human and medicinal purposes for, again, many, many years. It was used for wounds and sores in various animals. It's been used for inflammation. The seeds were also soaked in wine and water. The dried leaves were used to treat nosebleeds and expel tapeworms. Now, I had a question actually across the hall earlier today, and they said, hey, I've heard that people are recommending that we should take a lot of vitamin K for the synthetic cannabis that's out there. And it's not the synthetic cannabis that caused the bleeding. It was actually the counterfeit blood thinner that was in the synthetic cannabis. It was really synthetic CBD that was available over the counter that caused that. So what we found, and in the past at least, they had used these dried leaves to actually stop the bleeding, not to start the bleeding.